No, I like the idea of you framing it along the way of this is actually a performance enhancer. I wish that was sold to me like that. I would definitely, my ears would have pricked up. This is going to help your performance. I would have been like, oh, wow, okay. I find it difficult because as players at that stage of your career, you're not ready to hear that. The good thing about cricket is you're not sort of washed up as a 28, 29-year-old at least. Like it's a game that you can play well into your 30s. And in fact, you probably play your best cricket when you are sort of in your 30s because going back to what worked for me, I still had to figure that out, what my best looked like.
Hello and welcome to the Play Fearless podcast. My name's Dan Hasler, and as a performance coach who works with athletes and coaches across a wide range of sport, this podcast is my attempt to bring the best of what the science has to tell us with the stories and experiences of those who are actually in the arena. Now, my guest today is Mike Hussey, an Australian cricketing legend. A guy so synonymous with the sport he chose to play, his nickname is actually Mr. Cricket. His story is one of resilience, it's one of patience, it's one of self-discovery and self-awareness. And there's so many tools and techniques that he talks about in this conversation, which if you've taken part in our Play Fearless mental skills program, you'll be able to identify almost immediately. Now, if you haven't already done so, you should make sure you head over to playfearless.com and unlock your free membership. Because as well as getting online coaching with me and being a member of our Huddle community, you'll also get some members-only content related to this podcast, in which I just dig a little bit deeper into some of the stories that Mike Hussey shares with us. Why not grab yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a notebook, because there's plenty of lessons in here for athletes, for coaches, and for parents of emerging athletes. But right now, here's my conversation with Mike Hussey. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. We obviously we crossed paths last year as when an athlete I was working with mentioned that they looked up to you in the way that you went about your sport, and by a mutual contact we were able to sort of put you in contact with this athlete, and it just struck me right there and then just how not only just being open to it, but the way you connected with this athlete. I was just immediate. I was like, oh, I got to connect with you again and get you on the podcast. So I'm really, really grateful for you doing that, and I'm really keen to, I guess, dig into your experience, your stories, so we can share that with our listening community of emerging athletes and coaches and parents. So, yeah, thanks once again for giving up your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a bit out of the blue. I remember last year when you got in touch. I'm not a massive rugby league fan. Coming from Western Australia, it's more AFL than it is rugby league. So it was a bit out of the blue, but it was great to meet your athlete at the time and have a chat to him. Obviously, especially coming into such a important phase of the season. So it sort of caught me by surprise, really. But it was good to see him do well.
He did do well. He did very well. So so. You mentioned there growing up in WA, not much in the way of rugby league over there, although they've had teams in the past. But I'm wondering, let's go back. We have a lot of emerging athletes listening to this, maybe younger athletes, teenagers, whatever. Let's go back to your formative years, your teenage years, and obviously an older brother who is also a very handy cricketer in his own right. Just take us back to your childhood. What was that like? It was before the era of smartphones and whatnot. You and I are a certain vintage, and I guess we probably had different upbringings, though, me in the north of England and you in the west of Australia. But just bring us into that picture. What was it like growing up with your family and how you spent your time?
Yeah, I had a fantastic upbringing, really. I mean, really supportive parents. My father was an athlete, like a sprinter. He loved athletics, and he would have loved his two boys and his two girls. I've got two sisters as well, going into down the athletics route. But we fell in love with cricket right from the word go. My brother and I. We had plenty of backyard battles. That's probably where we got our competitive spirit. And I've probably said a few times if there was a spirit of cricket back in those days, we would have been banned for life. There was fights, there was punch ups, there was swearing, there was cheating. there was bribery, there was all kinds of things going on in the backyard. But it was Australia versus England right from the word go. So absolutely loved it. Just playing out in the backyard every day. Good competitive battles with my brother. My dad was a really competitive athlete as well. But and so he didn't know a lot about cricket, but he knew about how to prepare players, and so he used to take my brother and I down the beach and we do these sandhill sprints and he'd get us very fit coming into a cricket season. But he then would say, I've got to hand you over to the coaches now and let them sort of do their work with you. I've got you physically prepared, ready to go. But now I've got to hand you over. And in a way that really worked out well because both my parents, but particularly my father, he didn't put any pressure on us to perform as cricketers because he didn't really know or understand the game at that stage. So he didn't really give us a lot of advice, or if we got out playing a bad shot, he didn't come down hard on us. So looking back now, I was really appreciative of that side of his parenting. I mean, he was very competitive and he wanted us to win and make sure we gave our best effort all the time. And he prepared us very well on a physical sense. But then he was very much like, okay, you just got to go out there and play. And some days you win, some days you lose. And he never put any pressure on us in that respect. So I was very grateful. And then certainly I've taken that on with my kids as well.
Yeah. Were you always, and you and your brother, were you always like, and the sisters perhaps, or were you always the standout at your age groups? Were you coming through? Were you kind of known, if you like, as the guns or not?
Well, no, certainly not. I mean, my brother he's very naturally talented, so he probably stood out a little bit more than I did. But I was, well, both of us really, we were very little boys. We didn't have a lot of strength, we didn't have a lot of power. And I remember my first coach in the under-12 saying to me, he goes, you don't have any shots, that's okay. Work on a really good, solid defence and a good basic technique, because then as you grow and the bowling gets better, then you'll be best equipped to handle that. And it was the best advice that I got, because I saw these big kids that could just smash the ball everywhere and score very quickly, but I couldn't do that. I had these little deflections, and it took me forever, to score my runs. But having said that, I must admit I was identified to come through the Western Australian cricket pathway in the WA under 15s, under 17s, and under 19s. So they must have seen something in there, but I always felt like I was a bit inferior because I was so little and so weak and didn't have many shots. Yeah.
Did you have other sports as well that you had, or were you always focused on the cricket, or did you play the AFL or other?
Yeah, I played a bit of AFL, but my mum and dad were a bit worried about my brother and I playing that, getting broken legs or getting injuries and things like that. So quite fortuitously, really, we had a neighbour who started up a squash court, built his own squash court, and my mum said, right, we're going to go up and support this new business. And so my brother and I went up and played squash in the winter months. And that was it is a fantastic sport, and I think it really helped with cricket as well, with your footwork, with focusing on a smaller ball, your fitness, and so we played a lot of squash as kids growing up as well.
Yeah, the reason I asked that is, a lot what we're finding in the emerging athlete space right now, and you probably see this in cricket, is perhaps, and I'm certainly not here making calls on this, but perhaps some parents are encouraging kids to specialise too soon.
Yeah.
And not having that breadth of different kinds of sports, or I used the word before, activities. It doesn't have to be a sport, but just different things. And I was curious to. I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong. It's just a pattern though that seems to be emerging. We're getting kids into academies at 6 or 7, and there's no time for anything else. I was just curious, whether that mirrored yours. It sounds like it didn't, but whether that's obviously in your role as a coach now. You're now working with perhaps kids who are maybe are at the forefront of that wave of early specialisers. Yeah. I'm just wondering, if that's something you've seen or you have any thoughts on.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, I guess. I mean, I'm in the camp of trying everything as a kid growing up. Just enjoy it. Try every different sport. I played a lot of tennis. I played footy. I played a bit of soccer. I loved the Olympics where, I'd do the decathlon. I wanted to try a bit of everything, but your true love always comes through anyway. And so cricket was always my true love. But I sort of encourage, certainly my children to play everything, give everything a go. But I guess on the other side of the coin is if someone does show a bit of talent and they do go down their specialised early path, then maybe they get access to better coaching and they can move forward quicker in that sort of sport as well. So I mean, I'm no expert in that sort of field of play, but I
Yeah.
still believe in balance, and for my children, I'm certainly not going to try and get them to specialise, especially too young. I
Yeah.
want them to sort of experience a bit of everything.
Out of interest, how old are your kids, if you don't mind sharing?
I've got 4 children, so one's
Yeah.
20. I've got an
Yeah.
18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are they sporty? Are they following in any footsteps at all, or what's
Uh,
you?
yeah, my son. I've got 2 sons. So the eldest one is a daughter. She's not really that interested in sort of sport too much. But my 18-year-old son, he really enjoys his sport. Um, I mean, he loves his cricket, but it's not certainly something he wants to pursue. He really enjoys his AFL, so he's just going down the AFL sort of path at the moment. In fact, he's just done his ACL, so he's out for the year. So he's a bit
Oh,
bummed out
yeah.
about that. So he's done the
I
whole
bet.
pre-season, and yeah, he's a bit grumpy at the moment. But
Oh,
and then I've got a daughter who's 16. She's got mild cerebral palsy, so she doesn't do much sport at all, but enjoys it. And then I've got a young 12-year-old. Well, they just love every sport at that age.
yeah.
He's going to be playing for the West Coast Eagles in the winter. I think he's going to play cricket for Australia. He's going to be playing in the NBA, and I think
Yeah.
he's going to play for Manchester United as well. So he's going to
Of
be pretty
course.
busy
Yeah.
in his.
And he'll probably be a gamer as well, like a professional e-gamer as well. He's got all bases covered.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah.
When did you realise that cricket was going to be your career?
Oh, when I thought it was going to be my career, I remember. Funny enough, I remember announcing it at the dinner table with the family when I was about 15 or 16 years of age. I was playing squash as well and doing okay at squash, and obviously there was the school side of things as well. But I announced that I wanted to give up the squash or the sort of pathway, the state sort of pathway in squash, and really focus on cricket. And I wanted to give cricket a real crack. So probably about 15 or 16 is when I made my mind up. I mean, I didn't know I was going to be a professional cricketer at that stage, but I just loved it so much. I loved it since I was 5 or 6 years of age.
Yeah.
And that was certainly my passion, and it's what I got up every day for is having a bat in cricket or playing cricket or watching cricket, playing in the backyard with my brother. So yeah, I loved it all through my childhood, but it was probably about 15 or 16 where I said, no, I'd like to have a crack at this. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be good enough to play for Australia or anything, but I would love to have a
Right.
go.
Yeah. But so I'm curious though. So when did the penny drop that you went, oh, actually, this is because this is a thing. This is the path
Yeah.
I can go down. I'm not sure because we were talking a little bit before we started recording here. Like the difference between, and we'll touch on this in more detail, but the difference between your introduction into the profession versus a young kid now. There appears to be a stark contrast between that. So I don't, like, how old were you when you thought? Because I know, for example, you're a qualified teacher. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
correct.
as I am too. So used to be a teacher, not anymore. But but presumably that was you were doing that for a reason, right? There was
Well, I wish I could say my motives were pure and say that I wanted to bring on the next doctors and lawyers of Western Australia. But if I'm being completely honest,
mm,
the holidays were good over summer for cricket, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
finished
yeah,
school at 3 o'clock so I could go to cricket
yeah,
training.
yeah,
But I guess in answering your question, I think once I first got picked for the Western Australian team at 19, that
mm,
was when the penny sort of dropped and thought, oh, wow, I'm only actually one step away from playing for Australia.
yeah,
And I think that was the moment when I thought, oh, maybe I can make a profession or a career out of this playing cricket. Because, so probably 19 years of age is where I really started to believe that I could do it.
yeah. I love the way you framed that. So at 19, you realised you were one step away,
Yeah.
and yet it took another 9 years to make your ODI debut, and another 11 years, I think
Yes,
I'm right, if the maths is right, to make your Test debut. Yeah.
that's
So I
correct.
think that's so. Just for anyone listening, like I just think you're one step away, but that step. Well, one, it was quite a large step, but I'm also thinking there must have been lots of mini steps that were taken. I'm not quite sure how to use that metaphor, but you were one step away, but that step took a long time to
Yeah.
navigate. How? Yeah, because obviously, I mean, anyone listening knows and can tell I'm an Englishman, and so talking to an Australian cricketer from that era in particular, you know, there was a lot of good players there who were just panning England on the regular basis, and obviously you were champing at the bit, presumably, to get your chance to give it to the Poms
Yeah.
and other nationalities as well. But how did you navigate that time where you knew you were one step away? But it just perhaps, yeah, I'm curious, how did it feel? Did it feel like that step was ever going to be able to be taken? Or did you feel there was a finite time for you to take that step? Could you take us back to that,
Yeah,
those
it's a,
years?
it's a great question. I mean, it was a long journey, and I
Mm.
like to use the analogy of the journey, really,
Yep.
because in cricket, I don't know, it's such a difficult sport,
Mm.
especially as a batsman, where you make one mistake and you're back in the pavilion. But I guess as far as my journey went, I came when I first started playing for Western Australia. I played one game when I was 19, and then I started playing full time when I was 20. And probably my first 4 seasons, I played really well. I scored a lot of runs, and I felt like I was close. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it was such a hard team to get into. There were so many great players. They didn't seem to get injured. We didn't seem to lose, so they weren't changing the team very much.
Yeah.
And so I got through that first 4 years, and I was thinking, wow, I'm playing well. I'm like so close. What more do I need to do to play for Australia? Because this was my dream as a 6-year-old kid. Growing up in Perth, Western Australia. This is all I wanted to do. I mean, I
Mm.
loved Alan Border that much that I changed to be from a right-handed batsman to a left-handed just to be like
Yeah.
AB.
That's
um,
incredible. How old? Sorry. How old were you when you made that decision?
I was about 8 years of
I
age at
love
that
that. Yeah.
stage.
So good.
Oh, don't worry. There was a few times when I was in form slumps, and I thought I better change
Yeah.
back here. But anyway, when I got through that first 4 seasons, and I thought, right, I'm so close, and I want it so bad, and I'm trying so hard. I need to take my game up one more level to be able to take that next step. And it was a really interesting and important part of my development, really, because I looked at the Australian team at the time, and there was guys like Hayden, aggressive player, Ricky Ponting, aggressive player, uh, uh, Adam Gilchrist, aggressive player, even Justin Langer, who started off as a bit of a sort of nuggety sort of player. He turned himself into an aggressive player as well. I thought, that's what the national selectors want. They want aggressive players, and that's not the way I went about my cricket. I was more bat time, be patient, bat all day, work the singles, run hard, all that sort of thing. And I thought, okay, the national selectors want more aggressive cricketers. So I changed my game, to be honest, and I started to try and be more aggressive and play more shots. And of course, it made me very inconsistent, and it was detrimental towards my game. So I was very up and down. I actually ended up getting dropped from the WA team because I wasn't performing in a consistent way. And it was a real watershed moment for me because at that stage, I thought, oh, well, my dream of playing Test cricket for Australia is over. I can't even get a game for Western Australia, so I've got no chance of playing for Australia. And I remember it was right at the end of the season. I was so disappointed, and I just sort of thought, right, I'm just going to go back to playing my way. And through that journey, I'd learnt what had worked for me, and I'm just going to go back to enjoying the game, trying not to put too much pressure on myself, because that's the other mistake I made. I put so much pressure on myself. I wanted it so bad. I overtrained, and I was, just putting myself under the pump the whole time. And I thought, right, got dropped from the WA team. Let's just go back and enjoy the game, enjoy my teammates, enjoy playing for Western Australia, play the way I know that I play my best cricket. And it was funny, as soon as I took that pressure off myself and went back to my way, that's when my performances became a lot more consistent again. And funny enough, that's when I got the opportunity to play for Australia.
Yeah. Mike, there's so much in there which I think is so valuable. So when I'm talking to you, my son's 15 and coming through a sporting pathway as well, and I'm just I'll be playing him that. I mean, I'll play him the whole podcast. Whether his attention span will last the whole podcast, I don't know. But I'm going to play him that little bit because look, there's so much stuff in there. And just questions were popping off in my head there. Like the ability to go back and trust your process, and not try and be all things to all people. I think there's a real, and tell me if I'm interpreting this right, but there's a fine balance there because you had the evidence previously to say, no, my way works. So it's not this arrogance or this belligerence going, well, stuff you, I'm going to be, I'm just going to do me and whatever but the learning here is that you went away from what worked to essentially try and control something you couldn't control, right? You can't control whether you're going to be picked or not.
Yes.
Because of everything you said, the performances, the players that didn't get injured. At the end of the day, the coach has got, selectors are making decisions.
Yeah.
And I just think that, just helping young athletes recognize the difference between, that whole idea, I'm just going to do it my way versus, no, understanding what works and not going away from that in a bid to control something you can't control.
Yeah.
I just think it's because I think so many do get caught up, and not just athletes, by the way, their parents, perhaps their coaches on a local level get upset at the rep level and whatnot. So this is a pointed question, and I'd love you to answer as candidly or as openly as possible. Did you ever have moments where you hoped that the Aussie team might get pipped in a series, or or someone might just do a calf just to give you an opportunity? Did you? And I'm being a bit flippant here, but did you have to guard against that? Did you have to guard against this kind of negative mindset at times?
If I'm being honest, of course, I hope someone got injured along the way, but I don't know. It wasn't really a huge focus about the other players, really. I knew they were great players, so there's nothing I could do about them. I think the battle for me was just, you talk about going back to what worked for me. The good thing about cricket is you're not sort of washed up as a 28, 29-year-old, at least. Like it's a game that you can play well into your 30s. And in fact, you probably play your best cricket when you are sort of in your 30s, because coming back to the main point is going back to what worked for me. I still had to figure that out, what my best looked like, and so that's part of the journey. And I think that's the key for anyone, really. Is okay. It's all good and well saying, "Oh, I'm just going to play my way," but you got to figure out what your way is, and it takes time. It takes years to work, and I still had to evolve as well. I couldn't just be this nuggety little boring batsman. I had to add new shots to my game, and you naturally, I guess, gain that experience over time. And that evolution over time. But the journey for me was, okay, what does my best look like? What does it feel like? And that's what I was sort of focusing on more than, I hope this guy gets injured, because as you said, I couldn't control. They still might have picked someone else. But I just wanted to be the best player and the best person I could be, and then and it really worked in my favour in the end, because when I did finally get picked, I would have loved an opportunity earlier. But at least when I got picked, I had a great understanding of what I needed to do in my preparation to give myself the best chance of performing. I knew my game inside and out, so I could deal with whatever was thrown my way in a cricket sense. I'd had to learn how to deal with all the external distractions, the added media attention, the commentators picking apart your technique, other sponsors and charities wanting your time. I had to deal with all that sort of stuff. But at least I had a good understanding of my game. I sometimes see these young guys come into the Australian team and they've got to deal with all the external distractions, but they're still trying to figure out what their game is as well. And so it's extremely challenging. And that's why you quite often see young players come in, do okay, but then are inconsistent, end up getting dropped out of the team because they're still trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah. And again, comparing your introduction, in that period of time versus now, like where, the demands or the idea that they need to have personal brands and, all this social media and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I can imagine that. And again, maybe we'll touch on this later on in our chat, but yeah, just those distractions and being able to, with some of the athletes we work with, we talk a lot about, keeping your main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
Because we love novelty, right? As humans, oh yeah, I could try this. Oh, someone's giving me this opportunity. Someone's giving me that opportunity, But we're getting those opportunities because of our main thing.
Yeah.
And if we lose sight of that, I think obviously not all the time, and it's not the case for everyone. But I think having that discipline to be able to, or the skill, maybe it's a skill to be able to, disregard or prioritize better or whatever it might be, and maybe we'll touch on that shortly. But I mean, the story just gets better. So you wait all this time to make your debut, and I don't want to. I'll go to the Test debut because I think this is the now in hindsight, you can look back on this and go, you can tell the story with a smile on your face. But my guess is, so can you just take us through? So you've spent this time, you've been, dropped from WA team. You're thinking my dream's gone. You battle your way back. You have these epiphanies where you go, no, I've got to figure myself out, and you grind and you da. And then Langer gets injured. I think I'm right in saying, or and Huss, you've got your shot, and who presented you baggy green?
It was a guy called Bill Brown, who was, I think he was 95 years of age. He was the oldest Australian living Test player. So that was pretty special in itself. But funny enough, it was an injury that gave me an opportunity to play. And I still remember I was only on standby for Justin Langer. He had broken ribs, but he's one of the toughest blokes you'll ever come across.
Yeah.
And he was, I remember speaking to him before the Test match. He said, mate, you're a waste of time you being here. You might as well go home. I'm definitely playing. And then the physio would say, mate, he's pretty sore. I'd be preparing to play if I were you. And I remember the net session before the game, and I was batting after Justin Langer. And JL was batting, and he was batting like a dream. Like he was hitting cover drives and pull shots, and my heart sank again. I was thinking, I'm going to miss my chance again here, bugger.
Yeah.
But then as he walked out of the net, he just looked me in the eye, and he just said, Huss, I'm out, you're in, good luck.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
wow.
Oh, heck. And I think I got out my first 5 balls that I faced in the nets. My head was just spinning. I remember saying to myself, right, come on, you're going to play a test match. You've got to start preparing, prepare to play a test.
Yeah.
And in the morning of the test, I felt great. I was really excited. Bill Brown presented my cap. But it wasn't until Ricky Ponting went and did the toss, that's when things started to change, And I was opening the batting back in those days. So in about half an hour after the toss, I was going to be opening the batting with Matthew Hayden. And we did the national anthem, and I think I lost feeling in my legs about halfway through that.
Oh, wow.
And then I raced in to put my pads on and went to the toilet for about the 35th time. And there was Shane Warne in just his little Playboy underpants having a cigarette. And he just sort of said to me, Huss, look, I know you're nervous, but you've got nothing to prove to anyone in this dressing room. Just get out there, play your way, and you cannot fail. And that was really special for someone like him, such a legend of the game, to say that. It didn't help my nerves. It didn't help the butterflies. And then when I was out there in the middle, it's just amazing how the mind fails you at just the wrong time, I remember facing my very first ball in Test cricket, and we were playing against the West Indies, and he had a long run-up, thankfully, the bowler. And as he started his run-up, my mind started wandering back to playing in the backyard with my brother Dave and the battles we used to have. And then my cricket head would come in and say, for goodness sake, concentrate. You're about to face your first ball in Test cricket, And then halfway through his run-up, it wandered off again, thinking about playing for WA, getting dropped from the WA team, and then working my way back. And then, goodness sake, Huss, concentrate. You're about to face your first ball, And just as he sort of got into his delivery stride, I actually started to well up. I started to get tears in my eyes, and my last thought as he bowled the ball was, you can't be seen crying, in your first ball of Test cricket. And thankfully he bowled a bouncer and it sort of whistled past my eyebrows, but so I survived that ball. But I'd be the first to admit I did not handle the emotions well at all of my first test. It was such a long journey to get there. But there were emotions that you can't recreate, So I look back now and I still love that I felt that way. I didn't handle it very well, but I got to the end of the test match and I thought, wow, that was awesome. But I want to have another chance to prove to myself and the world that I can actually succeed at this level as well. So, again, that was out of my hands, but thankfully Justin Langer missed the next test as well. And I was in a much better place mentally for the next test, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, for context, for those that haven't had the benefit of just going back through the records like I have to prep for this conversation. So in that, you've waited till 30 years of age to fulfill your dream. And, I mean, the way you've just articulated that story is incredible. But the part that most people, but how many runs do you get, Huss? So it was what?
Not many.
One in the first. Not many, right? So it was one in the first innings.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Right,
and then these are not my words, Huss. I just want you to know these are not my words. These are just the words that I found on ESPN Crick Info, whatever. It said an unimpressive 29.
Right.
Is that fair?
I felt really good in the second innings. What are you talking about?
but I'm wondering. So again, not my words, just quoting. But I've got to ask. So after that, you said, it was incredible. Obviously, you've played for Australia, but there was that nagging sort of that feeling. your next innings, you go and make 137. What, how did you manage the gap between the end of the first test and the start of the second test? So you were able, so you were able to turn that into 137 and in just your third innings.
I think it was being able to deal with those external distractions. For your first test match, all the attention's on you. The media's all over you. You've got to do extra media commitments. You're trying to organise to fly family over. I still remember getting out in that first innings for one and walking off, and my family were all sitting right above where I had to walk under the tunnel, and they were all just sort of, distraught. And I'm trying to fight back the tears, and, it was like, horrible. So it was more when I got down to Hobart, there was no family there. There was no friends. Hobart's a quiet sort of place as well. There was no attention on me whatsoever. So I could just immerse myself in my preparation, and just, this is what I need to do. Let's get back to just focusing on what I need to do to get ready to play a game of cricket. Yes, it's a test match, but it was just completely different feel. It just felt like the whole world was sort of swirling around my head in Brisbane, whereas when I got to Hobart, it was just narrowed down to, I'm just worrying about my preparation here and making sure I'm ready to go to play this next game of cricket. So I just felt a lot more focused on what I needed to concentrate on, really.
What I'm hearing when you say is, you have routines and you have preparation, and could you, like, what would obviously not every intimate detail, but what would a typical preparation or routine look like for you in, let's just say, the 24 hours before a game, or let's just start that 24 hours before a game. What did your routine and prep kind of look like?
24 hours. I prioritised sleep. Sleep was really important to me. Even like in the days leading up to a test match, I made sure I got lots of sleep. I made sure I ate lots of food. Sounds a bit weird, but I saw it as like fueling the tank. And then even all my practice sessions, you talk about routine. I was a very routine-based player. I was very structured, very organised. That's my personality type. Not everyone's the same, and that's fine as well. But for me, so I practiced my routine every single net session, just going through my pre-ball routine. And that was probably the cornerstone of my whole game, really. It didn't matter if I was facing my first ball, my 50th ball, my 200th ball. Didn't matter the situation of the game. That's what I stuck or held on to every single time, was that pre-ball routine. So just keep practicing that.
What was that?
Well, it actually took me about 5 years to develop. So I'll tell you what I did. It's a bit embarrassing, but it really
Mate, with your test record, it's not embarrassing.
No, it is embarrassing.
That's a fall back on.
Heard
that. Okay, all right.
I guess what I did was, when you say you have a great performance, one of those days where it just seems like everything just fits in flow. It's that you're in the zone, whatever the words are that you guys like to use. You just have one of those days where everything just feels like it's going in slow motion. I had one of those days, and I just took out a piece of paper and I just basically sprayed down anything I could remember from the few days leading up to the game, then what I did in the morning of the game, how I felt during the game, anything I could possibly remember, how I slept, what did I do for training, how I felt in the morning of the game, what did I do in the warm-up, how did I feel as I was walking out to bat, what was I thinking about during the game, during my innings, anything I could think of, just spewed it all down on this piece of paper, put the piece of paper in the drawer. It might be maybe 6 months later where you have another one of those performances, or it might be a year. And so I did the same thing after when I had that innings where it was just, in slow motion. It was just so easy. Sprayed down everything I could possibly do. I did it 5 times over the course of about 3 or 4 years. And then after that time, after I got the 5 pieces of paper and I put them down in front of me, and I could see a very distinct things that I did when I was playing at my absolute best. This is what it looks like in your preparation, and this is what it feels like when you're out there in the middle. And so that helped me develop my pre-game routine. This is what I do. I sleep well, I eat well, I tick off these things at training. But more importantly for me, this is what I do when I'm batting at my best. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. And I was able to sort of bring it down to like a 4-step routine. So as the bowler starts his run up, I just have a quick little checklist with my stance to make sure everything's in the right place. Because that's sort of your foundation, really, your foundation building blocks. From there, everything else can go. Second of all, as I probably said earlier, I was someone that put a lot of pressure on myself. I was tense. I was trying so hard. So the second step was to relax, particularly relax my arms, relax my shoulders. The third step was right now, all those doubts, all those thoughts, all those negative thoughts, the clouds that are in your mind, it's time for them to go. It's time for them to sort of come out of your mind. And then the last step, just as he's about to let go, is like, see that bloody ball out of the hand. Just see that ball and react. See that ball and react. And that was my four-step routine. And then obviously you play the ball, and then it's like switch off completely. Have a look around the crowd, listen to some sledging, smell the barbecue, whatever it may be. Just switch off completely, and then start that process again. When the bowler gets to the top of his mark, bang, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And literally that's all I focused on, ball after ball after ball after ball. Didn't matter the situation of the game, and that helped me deal with those external distractions.
Yeah. Did it help, when you often see bowlers sort of setting batsmen up with certain, play and miss, play and miss, play and miss? Would that go into that sort of negative thought that you're just going to let go? When they say play every ball, I mean, that's easy to say, but I imagine it's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
If that did, what was your, did you have a particular phrase that you sort of, or a mantra that you would say in your head to let those thoughts go, or was it more just a feeling that I'm letting it go, or did you actually have something to say?
It took me a while to get there. Part of my Australian journey was I made the same mistakes as I did for Western Australia. We had all these great players retire, and I then inadvertently started putting more pressure back on myself. Oh, I'm a senior player now. I've got to take more responsibility. I've got to be a leader in this team, And it was the worst thing I could have done. I just needed to keep playing the way I'd always played. I didn't need to try harder or do more. So I ended up having an 18-month period where I struggled for Australia as well. And I was right on the brink of probably getting dropped. And I remember hearing a commentator say, well, this will be Mike Hussey's last innings. It was against England, actually, at the Oval, the 5th Test match of an Ashes series. I got a duck in the first innings, second innings coming, and Ian Chappell had said, well, he's too old. We've got to start trying some new players. And I remember thinking, well, if this is going to be my last innings for Australia, I don't want it to be one filled with stress, pressure, anxiety, and just not enjoying it whatsoever. If this is going to be my last innings, stuff it. I'm just going to go out there and enjoy it. And what will be, will be. And so you sort of, what's your little words that you say to yourself? That's what I said to myself. What will be, will be. I've done all the preparation. I've got nothing to prove to anyone else. What will be, will be. And it's funny, I can even feel it now. As soon as I say these words, I can feel the pressure coming off, the stress coming out. Yeah. It's out of your control, especially in a game like cricket where anything can happen. So as soon as I did that, sure enough, the pressure came off. I just relaxed, went back to playing my way, and made 100 and managed to keep my place for the next 3 years. So I really stuck to what will be, will be. That really helped me a lot.
Yeah, I love how you've been so clear in articulating that, because we talk a lot about coming up with cues and triggers for people for athletes, and what will be might be the most glib, superficial comment for someone else to hear. They might just dismiss that, but the way you said, I can still feel it now. I can feel the pressure coming off.
Yeah.
That is what we're trying to get. We're trying to find the thing which actually elicits that feeling. It's not just a cliche. It's something that elicits that feeling. So the way you've articulated that is beautiful. I think for anyone listening, it doesn't matter what it is, so long as it elicits that kind of feeling, whether it's a word, a symbol, a thought of somebody, whatever. So,
well, I've spoken to other players as well about this exact thing. How do you let go? I mean, I've heard players say, just let go. And how do you let go when you want something so much? But I've heard someone like Josh Buttler from England, I think he just says, fuck it. Every time he walks out to bat, he just says, oh, fuck it. And then I know MS Dhoni, who's an Indian guy over here, he's the greatest finisher of all time. In the most pressure situations, he's done the job like more than anyone in the whole world that's ever played the game. He's unbelievable. And his fanfare over here is unbelievable. The expectation on him every single time he walks to the crease is off the charts. And he actually says to himself, as he walks out to bat, it's okay if we lose today. It'll be okay. The sun will come up tomorrow. And I thought that was amazing, because we all want to win, of course. But he's almost saying to him, well, I want to win too, but it's okay if we lose. I'll still be
Yeah,
okay. And
yeah,
again, that's the same sort of ideas, really, just taking that pressure off yourself.
absolutely. Yeah, and at the end, and the other part of it is that's also the truth,
Yeah,
right? The sun will come up tomorrow, and
yeah,
I just think like because I'm really keen. You've used the word pressure a lot already. Where does pressure come from for you? Like, or not, maybe not. Well, maybe now in your coaching role, maybe,
mm.
but more specifically, I think as an athlete and as a player, how did pressure manifest for you? Where did you feel it coming from? Could you notice it kind of creeping up on you, or did it sort of catch you unawares? Like, yeah, when the word pressure's used for you, where did it come from? What did it feel like?
Well, pressure for me was I was always worrying about the outcome not going the way I wanted it to go, really. And so it's easy to look back now, and it's easy when you're not in the middle of that sort of cauldron of the game to sort of
Yeah,
say, oh, why did I just not worry about the outcome and just stick to my process along the way, which I was pretty good at, sticking to my routine, and then what will be sort of thing. That's probably when I was playing at my best, but pressure was, yeah. I think for anyone, it's you're worried about not getting the outcome that you want. So it's an external thing that you put on yourself. Um, yeah. So the great players that I've seen along the way, they've had this amazing ability to basically just disregard all those external distractions and focus on exactly what they need to do right now, and just being in
yeah,
control of that. That's all they can control. It still might not go your way, but it gives you the best chance of it going your way. Um, so yeah, that's what the great players are able to do. But everyone else out there, the spectators, maybe other players, we sort of stress about the outcome, and that's
yeah,
probably the biggest. And that's what I'm trying to, I guess, as a coach, trying to impress on the guys now that we can't control the outcome. We can only control
yeah,
of our process that we're doing. What we need to do right now. What does the team need from you right now? And then the
yeah.
outcome will take care of itself. Like the opposition want to win too.
Sure.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we
There's a
can't.
whole organisation working against you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just focusing on your process, I guess.
Yeah, because I've been using this for there is no pressure if you stay present
Yeah,
because if you're in the moment because pressure is like I'm worried about or it could come worried about the mistakes I have made that's led to this or I'm worried about the outcome. I'm wondering how much other people's opinions added to the pressure you might feel, like
mm,
judgment of others and with a specific like I think what you said with Warney saying to you, hey, you don't need to prove yourself here. Um, whether it was within that dressing room, whether it was the commentators, former players who maybe have just retired and they're
yeah,
offering their opinions to a global audience.
yeah,
Maybe social media wasn't as big an issue for you, perhaps in your
mm,
career as it is now. I see athletes checking their Instagram notifications virtually straight away, in
yeah.
some cases. And it's like, how much did the other people's opinions or judgment add or contribute to pressure?
Oh, huge, absolutely huge. I mean, my personality type is a bit like that. I do sort of want to please people, I guess. So I struggled with that. I must admit, and you talk about that Australian team that I walked into. It was such a great team. Like there was some of the best players that have ever played the game in that dressing room, and
Yeah,
I felt like okay, I need to prove myself to them first before I even go out there and perform on the field. So that's quite
yeah,
challenging. And you're right about the commentators, former players that you respect their opinion, and you want them to rate you, you want them to like you, you want to impress them. But at the end of the day, they're distractions. They're external distractions that you can't really control what they think of you. Some might like you, some might not. You can't control that. So it's an easy thing to say, but it's not important. Like you just got to focus on what you need to do. It's very, I don't know. That's where I kept coming back to my routine. That's what helped me the most. And then also what will be. That's probably the two things that help me the most to deal with all that. Like there's so many external distractions out there. Like you'd mentioned those ones there. I've mentioned a few before. It's somehow being able to deal with all those and just focus on what's really important. That's the huge challenge of any sport, I think.
yeah, for sure. We've mentioned routines and pre-game routines. did any of those routines become superstitions? Because you cricketers can be a fairly superstitious bunch, right? Like you're not allowed to move out your seat during a run chase or anything like that. So I'm curious, like, did you have any? And yeah, did you have any routines that actually became a little bit irrational?
I used to have a lot of routines.
Yeah,
A lot of superstitions. I used to have a lot,
yeah,
and it used to do my head in. I'd
yeah,
be keep adding to them all the time, and then I still got out early, and I was like, which one didn't I do? Did I not put my right pad on first, or did I not step onto the
yeah,
field with my right foot, or did I not put the glove on the right? What was it? Did I not have
yeah,
my lucky underpants on? Just the usual. So eventually,
yeah,
I came into a season, and I thought, right, I'm going to bin the whole lot of them, and
yeah,
I'm not gonna worry about any superstitions. And thankfully, that season I still scored some runs, and so I was cured from
yeah,
superstitions altogether. Um,
yeah,
I guess it's a fine balance between routine and superstition. And there were things that I
yeah,
liked to do in my preparation that I did
yeah,
religiously, whether it be some short catches just to get my eyes going, certain stretches that I used to always do, always having a little knock. That's part of my preparation, but part of my routine. But I
yeah.
used to feel a bit uncomfortable if I didn't go through that little routine.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that's actually one of the things I was just going to head to. So, how did you manage it? For example, if you didn't have the opportunity, for argument's sake, the bus is late to the ground, or it's the weather conditions are such that you can't get on the field, or
Mm.
whatever it might, or you can't get your favourite food at breakfast or whatever. How did you? And I'm not using any of those flippantly. Like I've heard that those are specific, routines, not for you, other people, but how did you manage that if your routine wasn't as perfect? Were you able to use that same letting go technique, and or did it kind of fester a little bit?
No, I think curing myself with all those superstitions probably helped me.
Yeah,
I was sort of able to
yeah,
sort of deal with that, no problem at all. I think where maybe if I would have struggled more if I didn't have the time and space to do my pre-ball routine like while I was out there. So, for example, sometimes against spinners, I would struggle to get through my four-step routine in time because obviously they've got a shorter run-up, and that
yeah,
rattled me sometimes. Like I felt like rushed and a bit sort of anxious because I
yeah,
couldn't go through my four steps in a nice, rhythmical,
yeah,
sort of methodical manner. So
yeah,
sometimes I got a little bit out of sync against the bowlers that had a shorter run up. So I'd have to make sure I got ready earlier. Um,
yeah.
but those spinners that sort of creep up on you and fire it in quite fast, they sometimes really unsettled me a bit.
Interesting. Yeah, that'd have been good to know for the English team, a few years back. um, you mentioned before, and I wanted just to keep circling back to this idea of being able to switch on and off, if that's the right terminology, between balls, because some of your scores. What we didn't finish out that first Test series. So at the end of that first Test series against the Windies, you had a Test average of 120 because you scored another 130. The game afterwards, and it would take a fair while actually for your average to drop below 100. You became, I think, one of the fastest cricketers of all time in terms of time to reach 1,000 runs. Playing in England, you made two scores of over 300. So clearly, you were able to bat time. You said that right at the start. That's how you you batted time, and I think the first time I ever heard this idea was actually from Steve Waugh, where he said, no, I didn't bat all day. I was out there all day, but I was able to switch on and off.
Yeah.
Is that how you framed it? So you were batting time, but it was kind of somewhat incremental and being able to build in recovery, so to speak, in between that. Is that fair to say?
100%. Yeah, definitely. And I
Yeah,
struggled with that as a young player because I was so immersed
yeah,
in the game. I was just
yeah,
concentrating 100% of the time. And I'd get to lunchtime and I'd be absolutely mentally fried, exhausted.
yeah,
So learning how to switch on and switch off in between balls. In cricket, you're actually only concentrating fully for probably a couple of seconds per ball. And then other than that, you sort of, okay, yeah, you might be thinking about the game a bit, but mentally you can relax a lot more. I have
yeah,
so much respect for other sportsmen and sportswomen. Like, say, for example, a Formula One driver. Like I can't imagine having to concentrate going at that speed around every corner.
yeah,
Like they must, the level of concentration for that amount of time, they must be absolutely exhausted by the end of a race.
yeah,
It just amazes me. But for cricket, it's literally a quick snippet, you concentrate, and then you sort of can switch off for a period of time.
And then what about day to day cricket? You know, the mental and the emotional toll, tour to tour. You know, like I look at the schedules of cricketers these days, and you know, on the one hand, obviously the punter sort of looks and goes, yeah, but they're getting millions. Come on, you know, they're in nice hotels. You know, they're this, they're that. You know, they're playing cricket. You know, they're not down a mine. But from someone who works in different environments like this, I can see the emotional toll it takes, you know, for being away from home, away from loved ones, living out of a suitcase. How did you learn to navigate that? And even now as a coach, you know, as we speak, you're in India for a solid piece of, you know, chunk of time, couple of months there. How have you learnt to navigate that mental and emotional part of sports, which isn't on the field, it's actually off the field?
No, it's a great question. I mean, it's really difficult. The first part of the question was over the course of a test match, 5 days, there is a mental drain. By the end of the fifth day, you're absolutely shattered, mentally and physically. But I love that, you know, because that's what Test cricket's all about. It tests you to the nth degree on everything: your skills, your technique, your mental skills, your physical abilities, everything. It tests you, and so you've just I just loved it because if you could be better than the other guys or the next guy, then you're going to win the game, or you got a better chance of winning the game. So I love that challenge, but I must admit I was exhausted by the end. The time away from home, that's the toughest part of being an international cricketer anyway, probably sports person in general. And that's why I retired in the end. I felt like I could continue playing the game, but I mean, we're away for 10 months of the year, and I had young kids. The toll on the family back home is really tough. I mean, I'm very grateful that I had a fantastic wife that could take care of the children. We had good support around her as well that could help. So it sort of I felt like that was sort of sorted off the field and that I could just concentrate on the cricket, but it still got challenging along the way as well. And then from my point of view, I felt guilty at times because I'm missing out on watching these kids grow up. I'm not there to support my wife, when she's getting tired and run down as well. So, that's the hardest bit, I think. Yes, we are very lucky. Travel to some of the best places in the world. We do stay in nice hotels. We're playing a game we love. We're with our mates. It sounds glamorous, but it definitely wears you down after a while. Even like at the moment, we're away for 2.5 months in India for this tournament. By the end of that 2.5 months, like you're just shattered, mentally and physically exhausted. And then back home, the family's shattered as well, particularly my wife, because she's trying to do everything on her own.
Yeah,
And it builds up sort of stress and tension. And it's definitely the most challenging part of the game.
yeah. And so how, without going too deep into, but how do you manage that? Like, again, leaning on your experience of having routines and like, is it just proper conversation, making time to connect? Like, yeah, I'm just curious because one of the things that we reflect on with junior athletes, 16, 17, who might be traveling to New Zealand to play a rugby game or whatever, like, and they look at us a bit funny when we say it, but you've got to learn how to travel.
Yeah.
I'm just again wondering, like, if there's any, maybe not for the 15, 16-year-old, but maybe someone who's thinking of moving overseas to pursue their career.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've learned that means, you're able to sustain strong relationships, or are there good boundaries or good conversations to have prior to doing that, or are you still muddling through it yourself?
Well, if I'm being honest, we struggled a lot in the formative years. It's probably not until I've become a coach now that we've probably got better at it, because I guess as a player, I was away and I was fully immersed and focused on the tour and playing my best cricket. That sometimes it's like, oh, that's in the background. I can't focus on that. I need to have my attention here, and that was a mistake. I definitely look back at that as a huge mistake. Now we manage it so much better. We communicate every day. I mean, back in the old days, when I was playing, there wasn't even a mobile phone, so communicating was a little bit more difficult. But we communicate every day without doubt. The conversation still sometimes I think at the start of a tour, it's normally pretty good. My wife gets into a good routine. We've got energy and stuff like that. And then it's sort of, you can feel it to start to plateau out a little bit. And then by the
Yeah,
end, we're both just exhausted. And it's like, just hurry up and
yeah,
come home, you know? So the
yeah,
conversations sort of
yeah,
deteriorate a bit. But I think it's important to continue to communicate. Well, we communicate every day. With my
yeah,
kids, we have like, so say with my youngest son, I'll do his reading with him for his homework, you know, and so that's a way we can spend a bit of time together. My daughter and I, we can both do the Rubik's Cube, so we have Rubik's Cube sort of challenges to see who can do it the fastest. Little things like that. My wife and I on a Friday evening will meet together and we'll have a drink together like we used to do at home, you know, and sort of just little
yeah,
sort of rituals like that that sort of keep us connected, which I think's really helped. Um, but yeah, so they're the sort of, but I didn't do that as much when I was a player. So looking back now, I wish I did that a lot more. I wish I connected to back home a lot more. I feel like that really
yeah.
helps a lot.
That's interesting. So, how do you help people square that? You know, because we spoke shortly, or a while back there, talking about managing distractions. I wonder, yeah, how good we are at understanding what's a distraction and actually what's not.
Mm.
You know, like so, you know, thinking connecting at home, is that a distraction, or is actually that really good for me and good for them?
Yeah, I think I saw it as a distraction when I was playing, but I was wrong. I made a mistake there. I think that was something that gave it. Well, now it gives me balance, you know, and
Yeah,
it helps me to sort of mentally refresh a little bit as well. Connecting with the people
yeah,
that you love is important. There's a lot of other distractions out there, but I think I made that mistake when I was a player for sure.
yeah. Which is a kind of segue into this idea that one of the things, one of kind of like my core principles, I guess, or like a start point when I'm working with an athlete is trying to get them to decouple who they are from what they do.
Yeah,
You know, and understanding that you know it's not your identity. It's a way to express your identity, and it's great to have lots of different ways to express your identity.
mm.
The reason I'm asking you specifically about this question, and I know I'm not sure how this always lands with you when it gets brought up, but your nickname is Mr. Cricket, or what, you know, one of your nicknames, right? And I know that you know you might have a love-hate relationship with that nickname. I don't know, but yeah, I guess you know if your nickname is Mr. Cricket, that I'm wondering how you squared that circle around having other things in your life. Obviously, you've got other people in your life, but other areas, other interests, other aspects to how you could be us. You know, how
Yeah,
you could be Mike,
mm.
not how you could be Mr. Cricket, but how you could be Mike in other domains outside of cricket.
Yeah.
Was that something you thought about? Did it happen? Was it something that you look back on and maybe you didn't do? And yeah, I'm just curious on how that.
It's a really interesting question, and I mean, I can see the value of it now. I mean, we had people around the Australian team, you know, that are far more intelligent than me, like you, that would sort of talk about these sort of things, you know, about having
Yeah,
balance in your life, and you know. But I mean, again, as a player, it's hard to hear that sort of stuff. I don't know if we're ready
yeah,
to hear that as a player, because I felt like for me to be successful to play for Australia, which is so hard, I have to
yeah,
be 100% switched on to this. I have to give my whole life to this. Nothing else can come into this. For me to be at my best, I have to be fully immersed in playing, you know, for Australia. That's what I've got to give all my attention to. I haven't got time for study. You know, I don't want to study. You know, I haven't got time to bloody deal with, you know, my family. You know, what's going on at school. You know, I can't deal with that now. I need to be focused 100% on this. And so I struggled with that, you know, because I was thinking, well, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to do any part-time work or, you know, prepare myself for life after cricket. This is my life right now. I have to give all my attention to this now. But then I guess now that I've sort of come out the other side, now that I'm ready to hear it, I I agree with it. I mean, I'm the same. I'm trying to say to the players that I work with, what else are you doing outside? How are you setting yourself up for life after cricket? What's your family life like? You know, do you do any study or whatever it is? You know, and they give me the same blank look that I used to give, you know, the intelligent people when I was playing. You know, so what else? I say to these, especially these young Indian guys, you know, what do you do? Have you done any study or work or anything? No, 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 sir. I'm a cricketer. I play cricket.
Yeah.
You fear for these guys, because they're putting all their eggs in their basket, and it can affect you negatively. But I find it difficult because as players at that stage of your career, you're not ready to hear that. You just want to be
Yeah.
fully immersed in it. So I don't know. That's one of the challenges of coaching, and I guess probably one of the challenges of your job too.
Yeah, because that's one of the things we're trying to work on it. Because I think if you can, and this is just a theory in my head at the moment, but if we can frame that as a performance enhancer, then all of a sudden they're going to be more interested, right? But at the moment, and you sort of framed it this way, it's almost like it's taking away from my performance
Yes.
if I do this. But what I try and do is try and square those other things as a form of mental recovery. It's a break, which then in turn allows you to go full circle, so you're better able to prepare, better able to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's I think it's a challenge. Lots of different sport associations here. Obviously, they actually have some mandated rules for younger players in the NRL. They can't have. I think up until they're 20 or 21, they have to be doing something else as well as footy. They have to be doing some sort of qualification and whatnot. But yeah, it's one of them. I fully understand why someone would look back at me and go, Dan, be quiet. You know what I mean? I'm all in on this. And a part of me really respects that. It's a really hard thing for me to square because I get it and I actually respect the single-mindedness and the dedication to it as well. But I also, I guess, have that benefit of being slightly removed,
Yeah.
From that and say, yeah, but come on,
No, I like
yeah,
the idea of you
interesting.
framing it along the way of this is actually a performance enhancer.
Yeah,
I wish that was sold to me like that. I would definitely, my ears would have pricked up. This is going to help your
yeah,
performance. I would have been like, oh, wow, okay.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like you when you said there, this is taking away from my performance. That's how I saw it. But if you could
yeah,
sell it to me as in this is actually going to help your performance, and looking back
yeah,
now, it definitely would have helped my performance. I was too
yeah,
sort of rigid and concentrating too much and so hard, putting so much pressure on myself the whole time. I needed that sort
yeah,
of mental break, but I
yeah.
couldn't see it at the time.
No, no, it's yeah, I think it's a classic one, isn't it? Like yeah, you have to go through it to understand it, but by the time you understand it, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
Honestly, I feel that about parenting every day. you know,
yeah. No, I
so
hear.
why you get through it? Oh shit, I should have done that. I should have said that. Yeah. So, which actually, I just wanted to sort of round out. There's two things I'd like to round out with. The first one is, and I don't want to make you feel awkward on this, but I'm just wondering, like, with your experience, you're standing in the game, your success in your field. It doesn't have to be emerging cricketers in mind when you think that this, but just emerging athletes in general and their parents. Like, if there was like one piece of advice, like you mentioned before, the best advice you ever got. Well, I'm curious, like, I wonder if we could, what's the best advice you could give to emerging athletes, someone in that 15 to 19-year-old bracket, or maybe, depending on their sport, maybe heaps younger, right? Maybe they're divers, gymnasts, whatever.
Mm.
But not just them, but also their parents. Just a little bit of advice that, whether they take it, yeah, it's up to them, but just something that you would like to lay down for them to consider.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, my head went in two different sort of ways there, thinking about it. Obviously, there's
Yeah,
the usual, stuff. You've got to work hard. You've got to, enjoy it along the way. You've got to, be focused. All that sort of stuff. Put in all the hard
yeah,
yards. But I think also, again, which they're probably not ready to hear at a young age, but maybe parents need to hear it as well. Is how do you want to be seen to have played the game? So for example, like if I asked you a question, how many runs did Ricky Ponting make in Test cricket? Like, I don't have a clue. How many runs did Matthew Hayden score? I don't know. How many tries has Nathan Cleary? I have no
yeah,
idea. But I remember how they played the game,
yeah,
and what and sort of their identity as a player. And so I try and impress this on young players now as well. Sort of saying, I mean, I'm not going to remember how many runs you scored at the end of the thing, but I'm going to remember how you played the game and how you held yourself as a character. And
yeah,
and I think it's easy to sort of say that now that I'm sort of finished, but I worry with some players, they just want the performance so badly that they take their mind off of, this is going to actually open up opportunities for you post your career as well. If you play the game where you treat people like rubbish, you cheat, I don't know, you argue with umpires, that's what people are going to remember you for. They're not going to remember how many runs you scored or whatever. They're going to remember how you played the game. And if you've got that reputation, there's going to be jobs post cricket. Companies aren't going to want to be connected to you. But if you play the game in a great spirit, with humility, treating your opposition with respect, treating umpires with respect, obviously giving your 100% effort on the field, but playing the game in the right way, then I feel like your character will carry you so much further in life as well. And I see it with parents all the time. Parents want their kids to be the best player they can. They want their kid to play for Australia. And they put so much pressure on the kid for wanting it, so badly. But two, it's almost like they're going to do it at any cost, and they don't care about the character side of things. I just think the character of the person is so much more important than the player. And so it's a bit of a weird way to answer the question, but I try and focus more on the character side of things rather than the performance side of things. Because a lot of the time you can't even control the performance, but you can control your character. And I try and impress on any team that I'm involved in is how good a character you are.
Yeah, for me, it's not an odd way, because my mantra, which I bash athletes over their heads with and coaches, is I'm interested in results, but I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on the manner of the performance. And so for me, which sounds odd sometimes when people, a performance coach, it should be about, they think it could be about winning. How do we get, it's like, yeah, results are important, but a lot of the time in sport, there's so many variables. That's why we love sport.
Yeah.
If it was all, so the manner of the performance, the character, I think, so you're speaking my language, Huss. It's, and it's, and what I like is athletes listening to someone who's done what you've done. Maybe it'll go in a different way.
Well, it doesn't seem to work with my sons, like they.
Let me tell you this. I'll share this with you. So my son often comes along with me to different environments that I work in, and he came into the Panthers with me, and one of his favourite players was injured, so we're sitting out the wrestle session, and he's just so this guy's a great guy. He just comes over and sits and chats with Jackson for about half an hour while they're training, and anyway, we come home at dinner, and he just starts going, Scott says this and Scott says that, and and I'm sitting there going, yeah, I said that to Scott, and furthermore, I've been saying it to you for years, mate. but it's just, I think it's important that we have these multiple angles on it, and obviously Scott Sorensen has got the runs on the board, so to speak, so that Jackson's ready to listen to that. Whereas I'm just dad, I'm just dad. Yeah, I want to finish with 6 throwdowns. So throwdowns. Okay. So I'm just going to hurl ones at you, and it's sort of like first thing that comes to mind. And then if you're unhappy with any of them, we'll re-edit them. But yeah. So first throwdown, you're picking a team that you're part of, and it's a must-win performance. You've got to win. Who's the first person you've picked alongside your name?
MS Dhoni, without doubt.
Yeah. Okay. Because.
He's so cool and calm under pressure, but he's got this amazing ability, particularly in a country like India where literally cricket is bigger than religion. He's got this amazing ability to take pressure off all the teammates, all his teammates. He takes the result out of it. Let's just enjoy the game. Let's enjoy each other's company. We might win, we might lose, but just give you 100% level best effort, and then again, as I've said before, what will be will be. But he's the greatest at that of all time.
Yeah, toughest bowler you've faced in opposition.
It's hard. I've got 2 actually. One's a Muralitharan from Sri Lanka. It starts with the eyes, so he's got these huge white eyes looking at you as he's running into bowl. He's got this crazy action where you have no idea which way the ball's going as it comes out of his hand, so that's pretty scary in itself. And then you can hear the revs on the ball as it's coming down. It's like as it sort of comes down at you. And then there's normally about 3 or 4 chirpy Sri Lankans around the back chirping away. So that was pretty challenging. And then probably the other one from the other end of the scale is Dale Steyn from South Africa. fast
Okay.
bowler.
Yeah.
And again, it started with
Yeah.
his eyes. It was like he wanted to kill
Yeah.
you first before he got you
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
he was pretty
Yeah.
challenging to face as well.
Okay. Toughest bowler in an Aussie net session. Someone who you thought, mate, I'm on your team here. Like, what are you doing?
I could name about 5 or 6, I reckon.
Oh,
Mitchell Johnson
yeah.
was horrendous, but at least he bowled with
Was he?
his foot behind the line. So Brett Lee was probably the fastest bowler I've ever faced in my entire life. He bowled at like 160 k's an hour. But in the nets, he would bowl with his back foot over the front line as well. So he's bowling like from 16 yards away, and bowling like the wind. So that was ridiculously
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. Best innings you've played.
Oh, best innings I've played. Jeez. Okay, well, my most enjoyable innings was we played a test match in Adelaide against the old Dart, the Poms.
You're not talking about amazing
Yeah,
Adelaide, are you? You're not talking about amazing Adelaide.
yeah. So I was out there to hit the winning runs on that day, and to this day, it's still the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
I've ever had on a cricket field. So
Oh, I'm so pleased for you. Thanks, Huss. I'm so pleased for you. So, a side note to that, my family came out. My parents came out for that tour. So, obviously, I wasn't. England had beaten you in England previously, and so they booked the Ashes tour. They're coming, and obviously we got done 5-0. We were in Melbourne, and I think that was done in 2.5 days. it was just like this most anticlimactic trip to Australia. But anyway, yeah. So I'm pleased for you, Huss. So the amazing Adelaide, yeah. The most challenging conditions. Where's toughest to play?
funny enough, India is probably the most challenging, but it's the one I love the most because
Okay.
I grew up in Perth, where the whacker was fast and bouncy, so it's all pace bowling, cuts, pulls, balls flying around your head all the time. You get to India, it's hot, it's humid, the food's different, the crowd's crazy, the pitches are like low and slow and turning backwards and exploding in front of you. You know, it's like playing on a beach at
Yeah.
times. You know, so that was probably the most challenging. But as I said, I absolutely loved it and learnt over time how to play well in those conditions. So I eventually figured out how to play in those conditions and really enjoyed it. I also found England really hard. It's just the moving ball. Once that ball's moving, it just makes it so much harder. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you could go back to one moment in your career, and it can't be amazing Adelaide, what if you could go back to one moment in your career and just relive it one more time? What would it be?
Oh, well, yeah, that I've got two. Winning the World Cup in the West Indies in 2007. I'd love to go back there and do that again. That was an amazing feeling. And then also, yeah, that last day in Sydney when we won the Ashes 5-0. It was Shane Warne, Justin Langer, and Glenn McGrath's
Yeah. I was there.
last
I was
day of
there
Test
in the
cricket.
crowd.
That was an
Yeah.
amazing feeling. You know, to be
Yeah.
part of an Ashes series where you
Yeah.
win 5-0 is pretty special.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, a landmark where legends of the game are bidding farewell. I mean,
Yeah.
funny story. I was doing a tour of the MCG the day before the MCG test, and I stumbled into Warney's press conference when he was making
Oh,
his,
really?
saying he was yeah, and I was just stood at the back, and it was the most bizarre moment. I should not have been there, but somehow I'd stumbled in. But yeah, it's Huss. I knew this was going to be a great chat, and I knew I was going to love it, and I have, and I reckon there's so much. So many little things that people, not just cricketers, but anyone interested in performing whatever chosen sport or whatever their field is. I reckon there's so much there, mate. So I really do appreciate you giving up your time today over there in India. And yeah, how are you looking this season in the IPL? At the moment, as we record this, it is 24th of April. So how are we faring at the moment?
Not too bad. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it as well. And yeah, I hope we don't put anyone to sleep out there. As far as the IPL goes, yeah, it's a great tournament. Like it's an amazing tournament. The competition's so tight. It's the best T20 league in the world by far. And I just sit back in awe and just watch these guys. The skill and talent in this country is amazing. So
Yeah.
we're going okay. I think we've won 4, lost 4. So we're sort of in the middle of the table. We had a really tough loss last night. One of
Right.
my compatriots, Marcus Stoinis played an unbelievable innings last night, scored 100. They chased down a big score, 207, I think, 209 they chased down, and they got it in the last couple of balls. So that was a tough one to take, particularly at home. But we've got such a really great, resilient group. Fantastic head coach in Stephen Fleming from New Zealand. He's kept us all pretty calm. We've got a new captain, like MS Dhoni used to be the captain. He stood down. He's still playing, but we've got a young captain who's a fantastic guy as well. Still got MS Dhoni around, so the feeling's really calm in the group. And we've sort of been down this path before. It sort of seems like Groundhog Day. We always seem to hang in there, and then just hopefully come good at the right end of the season. So it's such a tight competition. Anything can happen. Anyone can beat anyone. But I feel like we've got a really good environment, so we're still confident.
Yeah, great. Well, I've just adopted a new team in the IPL. Anyway,
good to hear.
So thanks. I couldn't say that. So, once again, mate, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And, I hope our paths can cross again down the track sometime.
No worries, mate. Thanks a lot for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Well, I wasn't wrong, was I? There's plenty in that conversation, whether you're an aspiring athlete or already, making a living out of your sport. I think there's a lot of lessons that we can take from Hussey's journey. And as I said before, if you head over to playfearless.com and unlock your free membership, you'll just find a little bit of members-only content in which I dig into just a couple of those points in a bit more detail and relate it specifically to some of the tools and techniques that I teach. But until our next episode, if you found that conversation worthwhile, then there's a fair chance that someone you know would also find it worthwhile. So please take a moment and just share it with someone via WhatsApp or through email, or just tell them. Tell them to check out the Play Fearless podcast. And while you're here, please take a moment to like the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening or watching, because that is the best way that you can support the podcast. So until our next episode, thank you so much for being part of Play Fearless. Let's go.